stuff here, so. Oh, yeah, we do. Oh, look at that.
Heidi, are you ready? Good evening, everybody. Let's call this meeting to order. Special City Council meeting Tuesday, August 31st. It's 5:30. It's just a little late. We'll start this off with a roll call and determination of quorum.
Nordstrom.
Here.
Weifenbach. Roberts. Stroman.
Here.
Armstrong.
Here.
Jones. Lehman.
Here.
Solomon. Evans. Drew.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Next, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Liberty and justice for all.
Next, we have the adoption of the agenda, but Pauline or Heidi or Joel, we aren't taking motions.
Correct. It was advertised as no action being taken, so that is what we will be doing. We'll just have some discussion, and if there's consensus on something, we will do our best to get that reflected before we do the first reading of the ordinance on September 7th.
Sounds good. Thank you. So we'll skip that item. General public comment. Not seeing any. We'll open and then close that. Non-public hearing items. We'll open and close that public comment. We'll jump right into item 1. City Council discussion on the mayor's 2022 budget. I'll open the floor.
Just so you guys know too, I am putting up on the screen the spreadsheets by department as far as what's in the general fund and others. I'm not sure if you can't see it up on the one. That one not showing very well.
It's pretty dark up there.
So if there's something in particular on these, I can go to that department. We do have a number of department directors here as well if you have questions for them. I was telling Tracy that this seems to be another one of those things that Kelsey just did and nobody knew about it, but my understanding is you don't have the mayor's budget presentation at this point. Is that correct? Was that not emailed out to you after he gave the budget presentation?
I didn't receive one.
We have the original PowerPoint from
Okay.
a couple of weeks ago, or whenever you presented it.
Okay, you do have
Yeah.
that one though.
Yeah.
Nothing since then.
We don't have the details, so if anybody requests that, is that available?
The detail is what we would send you is on the screen right now, but yeah, we can email that to you.
Okay, that's it. Don't want it. Thank you.
Thank you, Pauline. Jason Solomon, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I think this is more of a discussion item for the council. I was thinking about the use of undesignated cash and unspent monies through the year and what we do with that. I think the mayor brought that up. Just love to kind of throw out on the table, what if we use the previous year's undesignated cash that's not used to reconcile the budget, but anything we have extra, maybe Pauline, you can chime in. What if we take that and put it towards our CIP budget for infrastructure, in particular, perhaps future infrastructure projects, the proactive projects we could take. So let's say we had 1 or 2 million extra a year. What if we applied that wasn't applied to the next year's budget into future infrastructure projects that we might deem worthy of development, whether it's a road, sewer, water, those sort of things, rather than try to figure out a way to spend it or absorb the money. But I'd like to have a plan for the undesignated money from each year rather than float around. And Pauline, do you see a problem with that, I guess, as I kind of throw the idea out there?
Yes, because we don't know what that final number is going to be until December 31st, and we have to have the budget approved by October 1st. In addition, I would be hesitant to take money from the general fund on a regular basis and put it towards the CIP budget. We do have extra cash, undesignated cash in the CIP budget that we can allocate to additional projects. that should come from the CIP committee as a whole. I believe Mr. Stroman had actually asked about that, moving the CIP budget, increasing the streets to the 19 levels. And we have about $800,000 that we could do now, and as far as the 2022 budget is concerned, and then we could look at it again when we go in March. But
What about when we do close the year-end books and we know what unspent funds are that are not used for the next year's budget or for some other purpose? Could we then have that come to the council and figure out if we can allocate those funds towards? And I don't know if this is what everybody wants, just an idea. But I thought just to kind of get the ball rolling on this discussion, I'd throw it out there.
you know, we could do a supplemental appropriation after the year has started for the use of those funds. My recommendation would not be to allocate all of them, but to still maintain our reserve and then some money for cash flow purposes.
And we do in our budget, we plan for reserve as part of the budget, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I imagine anything we put in our savings, our reserves, we would budget for. But I'm just thinking anything that's unspent, to put it to use. And we've talked about proactive infrastructure in the past. I thought maybe that might be one way we could help with that. So it's an idea. Throw it out there just as a conversation started with the group, and I'll yield and let others pipe in.
Darla Drew?
Thank you. I think that Dale might have mentioned, Mr. Dale Tech, our Public Works Director, that even if we had more money in our construction budget, that would be a difficult thing to spend because of the availability of construction companies and workers at this point. They are struggling just like every other business to find personnel.
Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely do.
Thank you. Alderwoman Drew, I think you're maybe taking my comments a little out of context. I had indicated when we met at the CIP that any large infusions, I'm talking tens of millions of dollars all at once, is difficult to handle. Certainly, any stable revenue source into our CIP for any sort of infrastructure is always welcome. You've got to dip into it slowly. Like I said, if we dump a huge infusion, that makes it very difficult to get projects out. It puts our contractors' ability to handle all that extra work, it puts them at a difficult spot. So certainly any additional funding for infrastructure I'm in full support of at any level, just not huge infusions all at once.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you, Mr. Tech. As I've said before, I'm in favor of infrastructure, but no one has ever come here for our roads. No one will ever leave because of our roads. And so I think that it's not something I want to pour a bunch of money into at this point. I know they complain, but, you know, that goes with the job. So, Pauline, every time we come up against this budget thing, I hear the mayor say this like maybe 4 years in a row, we need an alternative to sales tax. And I'm just wondering if any of my colleagues or if you have any idea what that might be.
It's not an alternative that we need, but we need to lessen our reliance on the sales tax. So we need to either increase other revenue sources or find new revenue sources. One of the things that the mayor and I have discussed quite a bit lately is looking into developing policies, and it was part of his presentation, to have a policy regarding our fee structures and take it type of fee for type of service to determine how much the city wants to subsidize that program, or if the users of that program should pay 100%. I believe he made the comment during the presentation regarding the swimming pools that the only way that the users could pay for it fully without a subsidy from the general fund and the sales taxes would be to make everyone pay like $27 to go swimming every time, and that's just not feasible. So what is that right balance? We have the swimming, we have building permits, we have licensing, we have all sorts of fees that we charge, but what should be fully self-sustaining versus what should be subsidized. That's a policy and something that we should be looking at, among other ones.
I think that my council friends would probably be unwilling to do this, but I really do think a road tax is worth looking at, especially for the new developments. We simply can't keep up with roads and the developments at the same time. So I think possibly the people that are buying those homes could do that. We did it in the 60s. I know we did because my parents paid a road tax for the curb and gutter and street. So, and they live in Canyon Lake. So I would like to, yeah, I'd like to look at that.
So that would probably have been an assessed project, and that is something that Dale and I have talked about multiple times, but the council has never really had a stomach for it. But that has been something that's been discussed, and it would put that cost onto the property owners that are adjacent to those improvements. The other option that the state has is a street maintenance assessment. It's somewhat like the stormwater assessment that we do,
Yeah.
that you would have so much per linear foot, and everybody would be required to pay it. It would have to go into a special fund for street repairs and that type of thing.
Well, when we're looking at growth like we are at this point, you know, I just don't see where we can afford that and to repair our roads at the same time. It's pretty hard to do, and John Roberts might have some more insight on that. But anyway, let's see here. One more thing. When we're talking about economic stability and growth, to diversify the economic base and provide alternatives to tourism, once again, with that diversify bullet point, do you have any idea what the mayor might have in mind for that, or your department?
For economic development, it's bringing in those manufacturing companies and other types of companies that focus on things other than tourism. So whether it's manufacturing or it could be some kind of professional office setting, anything that we can get Elevate Rapid City to bring in a new business, to get those higher paying jobs and to provide that kind of income for our residents.
I'm just wondering if that's more Elevate purview than the council?
That's one of the reasons why I feel that we give money every year to Elevate, is to help them in their efforts. We certainly should be partners in that. We may not be the ones taking the lead, but we should definitely partner with them.
Well, I'm sure we have other people that want to speak, so I'm going to yield at this point. Thank you, Pauline.
Thank you, Darla. Richie Nordstrom?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to kind of spread the wealth around here for questions. If I can have Mr. Bigler come to the podium. We've been, as you're coming to the podium, we've been talking about the recovery rate and using that number that and I've been only looking at the percentages. And Doug Lowe provided some information to me this afternoon about the different percentages for the different activities that we have. What it's boiling down for me is how do we know that's the correct number? How do we know that it is a proper number rather than charging, as Director Assumption pointed out, it'd be $27 if we went full boat. But are we charging too much now, or where are we at? How do we stand?
Well, we, in the absence of any other kind of a formula or anything, we are using national averages for rates of recovery for our recreational programming, ice, aquatics, golf. So we are trying to get, we try to match that kind of national standard of rate of recovery. And we're pretty close around there. That's kind of our target right now. So we keep our fees low for swim and for ice because we want to encourage everybody to be able to participate in those. And yes, we could increase those rates, but at some point you're going to impede someone's ability to attend one of those facilities because you're going to price them right out of being able to go. So we've been keeping our rates as low as we can, and certainly that is maybe a broader conversation amongst council and staff in terms of your philosophy and how much the city should be recovering for those types of events.
Thank you. And Yes, I agree. I think we need to stimulate that conversation to find out if we are charging too much. If it's according to national averages, and South Dakota being in the lower percentile of income and everything like that, I would be very supportive of looking at, are we charging too much?
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Beegler.
Sure.
That helps me out, and I'll do my best to convince the rest of the council members to see if we can't take a look at this in a little bit more in depth.
Good.
I don't think we need a full study, like a consultant or anything, but just something that, I think Mr. Lowe suggested that there is a state conference coming with South Dakota, someplace here in South Dakota, and he was going to be asking those folks for some data as well, and we'll have that information by October?
The conference
shortly
is
after?
middle of October, so yeah, after that, first part of November, we'll have that information.
So we'll have a general idea
Sure.
about that. Yeah, I think that would be helpful. Thank you, Mr. Beegler. The next person I would like to visit with here is, I believe it's Director Fisher, or is Acting Director Fisher. What I'm interested in is the transportation. That's not within any of the numbers that I was seeing on the mayor's presentation. I was wondering if you could give me some general ideas, and I know we've got a consultant going through the transportation division right now and all of that. Can you give me some general ideas on what we're looking for as far as transportation?
We do have our transportation numbers called out within our budget.
Yes.
So hopefully what Pauline does forward all to you, we'll have that coded out. You'll find it in code number 706. And then through there, it goes through the typical salaries, consultant services, all those typical expenditures. And you will find that there is not much of a change from what you approved the last couple of years in a row, with the one of the differences being that we do have some open positions, so we're going to leave some money on the table this year.
Very good. And yeah, I know there's a lot of moving parts yet still in place, so I was just looking for a general idea about how much we're going to be expected to put into transportation, and I know we're waiting for the results from the consultant. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. And then we'll have a better idea what's going to happen with transportation in
Absolutely.
23?
And you're looking at the year 23.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
We've got that projected for 22, but with the consultant's assistance, then we'll have that projected for 23 as well.
Very good. Thank you. The next person I need to talk to, a discussion with, is Director Tech, if I may. Just to give you a heads up, I've been getting a lot of compliments on the street reconstructions that's taking place down in Ward 2, and people are really pleased to see, especially Elm Street coming into play now and getting that fixed up. So the public is really appreciative of that and all those efforts on that. So I think the next biggest issue that I keep hearing time and again is, and I think I know the answers to this, but the time and again is the drainage issue. How do we deal with the drainage, or how can we deal with the drainage issues down in my area? And I know I'm not the only area that having difficulties and challenges with drainage.
That's a great question, Alderman Nordstrom. As you are well aware, we do have our stormwater drainage utility, and that is our primary source of funding for drainage improvements, be it expansion of new drainage improvements for development, which has been a primary user of that fund, maintaining our existing drainage system, which was prior to 2014 when the Stormwater Drainage Utility Fund was created, was woefully neglected. We've made a lot of progress on that. And then also to retrofit, if you will. So certainly areas of town, when they were developed in the 30s through 70s, there wasn't much consideration given to stormwater management. And I think that's what you're referring to in your ward. But as far as our stormwater drainage utility, we're projecting a slight increase for 2022, but nothing of significance that would fund any large basin-wide stormwater improvement.
I know we're heavily constrained by the amount of money that we're collecting for the drainage fees, so being able to move forward on some of these larger projects is going to be a big challenge. Thank you. If I can go to Director Sumption, a couple of questions for you. One of the topics that was brought up is using the undesignated cash at the end of the year, which I'm hesitant as well about just giving a blank okay on using undesignated cash at the end of the year, but normally we have to be concerned about supplemental appropriations as well throughout the year.
Correct.
So-
Usually those supplementals use undesignated cash to offset the additional expenses unless it's a grant-funded program.
And sometimes those supplementals can take place, let's say, used, for example, in '21, it still could show up in '22. Am I saying that correctly? We could have a supplemental that has to address issues from '21.
Correct. Some of them are carried over into the next year.
Yes. So, and then we keep round numbers, $9 million in reserves?
Correct.
Yes, and if I remember right, it's set by policy?
It's in the ordinance right
It
now.
is.
But we should actually adopt a better reserve policy, which indicates what that reserve amount is or how it's calculated, when it is going to be used for, instead of just being as a backup, and then how to replenish it if it is used.
Thank you. I think that pretty well explains that part for me. And then you and I have had conversations about using the rescue plan, the ARPA funding on that, and I was wondering if you can reveal anything about using some of that money in front of the CIP revenue instead of using the CIP, if that makes sense to you?
Yep, it does. Mr. Nordstrom shared with me an email he received from, I believe it was the U.S. Treasury, or either that or his National League of Cities, in which if we replace streets, because we had to replace the underlying infrastructure, that being water and sewer, that the ARPA funds could also actually be used to replace that street, because that's part of the overall project. Am I correct? Is that the one
Yes.
you're referring to? Yeah. So that's one thing that we can do for those areas that we're replacing the water and sewer already.
Thank you. And if I'm reading it correctly, and I usually don't, so it won't be tens of millions of dollars. It'll be some revenue coming in that could possibly be used for CIP projects instead of using up the sales tax dollars. So what I'm talking about is putting it in front of the sales tax, and because there's a timeline on the rescue plan money.
Right, we have to have it obligated by 2024 and spent by 2026. The only things that I see, though, in that infrastructure money in the ARPA plan is for water and sewer. Like I said, they will let you do streets if you're replacing the underlying lines, but other than that, that's what the money can be used for. We're also trying to partner with the state a little bit in getting some of their funds as well, because the city will receive a little over 13 million. We received about 6.5 already, and we should get the other half next year. But the state also has money with that has the same strings attached to it, and so they were on a conference call, and the discussion was that they could use that money through their SRF programs to help cities get water and sewer lines possibly to new low-income and affordable housing projects. So we're hoping that that might come to fruition as well.
And one of the strings that are attached to this is we can't use it for drainage.
Correct.
Yep, afraid so. At this time, that's all I've got at the moment. I'm sure I'll have some more discussion items later on. Thank you. I appreciate
Nordstrom?
everyone's time. Thank you, Mr. President.
Pat Jones?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a few topics here, not really addressed to anybody, but just my thoughts. I remember when Mayor Allender first came on board, and one of the things that he talked about more than any previous mayor that I can ever recall or anywhere I lived was the topic of user fees, and that people that use things should pay for the things that they use for. The great debate about when you're a municipality is, you know, who pays for what and what shouldn't cost anything and where's the fine balance. And that's already been talked about tonight, and I won't belabor that, but user fees are a vital part of what we need to do if we're going to find other ways to pay for things. We either find ways to bring more money into the community or we spend less, and user fees are certainly a way. My social life right now is quite limited as I heal, and oh, by the way, Alderwoman Drew, your aggressive comments you made about taxes and roads and stuff, if you want to borrow my bulletproof vest on the way out the door, you're welcome to it. It's a 52 long, so you can probably wrap it around you about 3 times.
I'm not afraid.
Last Saturday, I was out at the landfill and just watching, we were dumping some stuff. Actually, my wife was dumping and I was sitting in the truck. But just watching the area where people dump their lawn clippings and that kind of thing. And that area is extremely busy, and most of us know that. And when we had a presentation from the good folks from our landfill and sanitation services, one of the things that was talked about was, you know, do we start charging for that as a user fee to pay for operating that? It's a vital service that many, many people use, so is that a place we have to look at? And so as I'm sitting there and my wife is unloading the truck, I'm thinking, well, what are ways we could do this? We could issue a permit. You pay $10 and you can use that all year or something. But maybe that's a way to generate a fee based on the people that use that, so user fees. We need to keep those in mind as we look at what takes place. Things like the swimming pool are vital for our youth. The summer that it was closed was very hard on our kids. And we need to have a pool, our pools available. People come here to enjoy our recreational facilities, so it's something we have to have. Our library. We have a library that is fantastic. If any of you have not been to the library recently, I strongly encourage you to go. When I served on the library board, I just was amazed at what we have to offer now. Alderwoman Drew serves on that board now. And you need to get down there and see it because it's a fantastic facility. In our budgeting of the $20 million, one of the things on there was $2 million for a bookmobile. If we could come up with, I believe it was $2 million.
300,000, Mr. Jones.
200,000? Oops. 300? Do I hear 400,000? 4? Well,
They've
200,000?
raised some money. It's 300,000, but you guys have already raised some money, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. And so, but that money kind of had a timeline to it, if I recall correctly. So we want to try to make sure and not lose out on their opportunity. $2 million, boy, but that was silly, wasn't it? Pain pills at 5 o'clock. We'll keep them coming. But we want to make sure we don't lose out on the opportunity to get the full bang that we can for that buck, because the things that a library bookmobile could do nowadays would just be mind-boggling. And so I think it's vital that we support that and fund that whatever way we end up needing to fund it, whether it's you know, through budget or whatever. But again, that's something that we need to have available. And then my final thing is the money earmarked set aside for the Journey Museum and the 50th anniversary of the Rapid City flood. The director was here last time and talked about that. And I like the idea that there's a certain line set aside for that. I would like to have that gentleman come in and talk to us a little bit more about what preliminary plans are there right now. Are they going to have try to have a committee of volunteers to take part in the planning in that? Because that's a very big thing for the history of Rapid City. And the fact that there's going to be a line item dedicated to pay for that, I think is wise. I think we need to spend money on that, and I would just like to see us learn more about that as we go, so the community can feel like they're very much involved in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Real quick, Ms. Drew?
Mr. President, could I respond to the statement of Pat Jones about roads?
Real quick, ma'am.
Yes, I would like to say that roads don't bring people here, but entertainment, recreation, a lot of the things, the amenities that we offer here, the beautiful Black Hills, is a reason for people to come here. And if we can draw enough people in with all of these amenities that are coming with the Civic Center online, our arts centers, our sports, things like that, that money can pay for roads. We will get money from people that come here to visit. And so I'm not saying we shouldn't do them. I just think that we can work this out so that our visitors can pay for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ron Weifenbach?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to clarify or Mr. Chair, I should say.
Don't wish that on me.
I want to clarify on the dump, there was never a consideration of charging for that service that's presently at the dump for grass clippings. It's a whole different conversation talking about commercial users. User fees, whatever, all this adding expenses, whatever, is just beyond me. When I typically put budgets together or whatever, I'm looking at both sides. I'm looking at where can I synergize, make things efficient, where do I need more revenue. We talk about user fees. I mean, I'm sure if Chief Hedrick could charge user fees, he'd sure do it. We look at and we make decisions based on the values that our city has. We look at the parks, the recreation, things like that, and we subsidize those roughly about 50% for the pools. Those are decisions that we made because if we hadn't done those things, a lot of people wouldn't be able to afford to use the pools, those types of things. So I would just ask my colleagues, when you look at these budgets, and we could talk and talk and talk, if you really want to do something about it, then do something. Otherwise, conversations that void what we're even talking about. I mean, so I guess I'll come down to my question to Pauline is, what is the current balance in the CIP?
Cash balance or balance?
Yeah, total balance of cash. And we could talk about these things. We should be proactive in the future and look at on either a quarterly or an annual basis of where these departments stand. So we're not at the end of the year trying to figure out these budgets, and we can deal directly with the directors, help them, finding opportunities inside their department. If there's investments that they can make to save money, there's things that they could do to make things better, those types of things. But talking about user fees and that stuff, I don't see any revenue problem here at all. Not at all. What I see is just an organizational problem of understanding where our departments are, what they need, how do we move forward. Just like in the landfill is a perfect example. If we would have had quarterly reports and we could understand so we don't get hit with a golf ball coming down a garden nose because of a previous administration's decisions or lack of decisions. So I think moving forward, if we want to get better at this, and we want to take this conversation seriously, we need to do some more reporting on it so we know what's going on. So
Mr. Weifenbach, at the end of July, it was $43.8 million that was in the CIP
$43.8 million
fund.
in our CIP. And what's the budget for next year? What is our projected sale? What are we going to spend?
Let me pull that one up.
Right. I guess I'd ask that same question. What are we going to spend and what will our revenue be? It's just so the people out here know and understand. We have 48 million in there now. We have projected or designated funding, and then we have projected funding. So I guess I'd like to know those.
So for 2022, the budget is for 20.2 million
Okay?
based on sales tax projections. We typically will have a bunch of carryover, so you can see where in 2021, our new budget after all the carryovers is 59.7 million. And even if everything were spent both in 2021 and 2022, we'd have 1.8 million left over. This is where that $800,000 number is I gave you earlier. We keep $1 million in reserves, and so we could release that other $825,000.
Okay. Now, what is our current reserve for the city? I
For
think
the,
that came up earlier, talking about maintaining our reserve. Do we maintain a percentage, Pauline, or do we
so
maintain?
for the general fund, it's 15% of estimated expenses less the capital expenditures.
Okay.
And so it's right, a little over $9 million right now.
That's our reserves, is
Correct.
9 million? Okay. So we can plan on continuing that. And then we talked about user fees, and I think if you look at the public works departments, if you look at their revenues and their expenses, compare them, take your time to compare them, you'll see the revenue and expenses there, so.
I will say that as far as Public Works and their enterprise funds, they usually do have their fees to make sure that they set so they are self-sustaining, as do the other enterprise funds, with the exception of maybe the golf courses. They tend to.
Right. So when we
Subsidized.
talk about sales tax, it's been one of the most, it's not even volatile, really. It's pretty stable. You get up here because you don't know what's going on from month to month or 6 months to 6 months. You panic, you start to make bad decisions. So looking at the challenges, you can cross that one off. Vision fund projects, adding operational costs over time without sufficient revenue collections. I got a list of those. One's the Journey for $400,000. Humane Society for $400,000, and I don't know if that's even a vision fund project. I think that's a liability that the city's decided to take on because it's a necessity.
It was we did give them $200,000 one year for
Okay, this
Vision
says
Fund.
$379,000.
No, that was what the Vision Fund paid them, but we pay them annually operating costs
I get
to
it.
do our
Roosevelt Park Pool,
control.
800,000. I'm going to guess because it's 16.4. It's 1.6, but it's not gross. It's gross, not net. So I'm assuming those are about half of that. So 800,000 to the pool. I'm not sure about the ice arena. It says 750,000. The Doll Arts Center and the Performing Arts are a total of 330. They don't receive any of the BB&B tax. The Civic Center gets $4 million of it. The Doll Fine Arts Center and the Performing Arts get zero from that money.
So the BBB, 75% goes to the Civic Center and 25% goes to Visit Rapid City.
Yeah, and the point that I'm making there, I'm trying to talk to my colleagues here. You guys want to make decisions, let's make real decisions. Talk about BS up here all night and walk away and have no answers. These places bring people to our community, which drive our sales tax numbers. Somewhere along the line, there's got to be a coalition put together to say these guys need to be part of that conversation and get it off the backs of the general fund taxpayers. Okay, this, the leisure pool, these are decisions that we made for quality of life. If you go back and you look at our Rapid City's vision, a balanced pattern of growth, a vibrant livable community, self-healthy, efficient transportation, economic stability, outstanding recreational and cultural opportunities. That costs money. That cost us $2 million, just so everybody knows that. We've made that decision. Let's quit harping about it. If you want to change that, then go change it. Go down and raise the fees so people can't go anymore and see what happens. Main Street Square, $75,000 worth of utilities, and that's only part of what is in the budget for the future. We need to look at those and see what's really going on down there. And One Heart Campus is a tune of $14,000 for property insurance every year. Those are some of that were listed as challenges. Other than that, it's the lack of cost to recovery policy philosophy. I talked to you a little bit about that. The property tax CPI debate, we can have that debate up here. Other than that, if you guys stick to the budget, if you want to make some changes, let's make some changes. Don't put extra pressure on people that you just want to ramble or whatever. Do that somewhere else. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weifenbach. And on that note, we're going to move on to item 2. Do any of my colleagues feel we need to have another budget meeting? Darla Drew?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I just get some clarification on what we're supposed to accomplish here?
Well, normally, typically, and Pauline can correct me, we
Okay.
take action at these meetings to adjust the mayor's budget since we approved the budget, but there was a mispublishing, so we can't take action.
Correct.
So really, we're just talking.
So basically, what happens, there's been years where we've had 5 budget hearing meetings. There's been a year that we've had 1 budget hearing meeting. And it's taking that, what the mayor presents to you and asking the questions of the department directors, sometimes tweaking their budgets up, sometimes tweaking it down, trying to make it your guys' budget, so that way when we get to first and second readings, all that time discussion has been taken away from a council meeting, just so because it deserves its own time. We don't want to rush anything. And so that way, those conversations take place and then first and second reading happen. We typically would have first reading tonight as well, but the mayor indicated during his presentation that it wouldn't be until the 7th of September. So that's why you don't see a first reading. We typically would vote on the CPI resolution, whether we're going to take that or not, because it went out saying that no action would be taken. That did not. That's on here for discussion, but not for action. That will also happen on September 7th. So from these meetings, Tracy and I get direction from you guys and sometimes the other department directors to make changes to the budget for those ordinances for first and second reading.
So I remember from previous meetings like this that we can make recommendations for someone to get more money, but we don't have to identify a source. Is that correct?
No, you have to identify a source.
We have to identify a source.
It's budgeted, or it's balanced coming to you, it has to be balanced leaving you. And so whether you say, okay, I want to give, I don't know, I'm going to pick on Jim Gilbert for a minute, because he's been touting a fee that we haven't even started. Say he wants another $200,000 for some operating costs, whether it's more Wi-Fi, public Wi-Fi all over the city, whatever it is that he wants. And you guys say, fine, you can have that in your budget. Your funding source, we want you to start doing a technology fee.
Okay.
So everybody that uses technology on our system pays $5 or whatever. Or you can say, you know what, we don't want to tell you where to get the money, how to raise it, so we're just going to make it easy on everyone and say it's coming from undesignated cash. That's happened quite frequently. Or you can say, I'm going to give him $200,000, and Pauline, I want you to cut $200,000, so that way it's even that way. So there's a multitude of ways to make sure that the budget's still balanced at the end of the day.
So we're not voting tonight. Can I just, blurt out, take this money from undesignated cash?
You can, and if I can get a feeling of consensus, we will work on whatever it is that you want us to do.
Well, I'll yield and think about that. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Nordstrom, did you want to jump in on this item?
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, a couple of things that haven't been discussed yet, and I wanted to see if I can't get at least an orientation on, and Pauline, if I may direct this question to you, is that I'm not familiar with the PILT process and how that works. Is it possible that you could just email that information to me, or whatever's convenient for you?
I could just,
Mr. Nordstrom, can we keep this to future budget meeting items? And
Yeah, that's what I'm asking, is if we can get this on to the next budget meeting.
so we want to have another budget meeting?
Is that what you're recommending,
if I
Mr. Nordstrom,
could-
is another budget meeting, separate
Yes.
from the council meeting on the 7th? Okay.
Yep, if I could. And then if I could also ask the mayor to bring in his presentation, what he did about 3 years ago to help Mr. Weifenbach on where this user fee support came from. It came from the public, but he's got all the information on that. So if he could bring that information in, he's got a poster board that showed about what the public desired as far as priorities within the budget. So if I could get those 2 items on the next discussion, I think that would help out of Mr. Weifenbach as well. Thank you. I'll yield.
Thank you, Mr. Nordstrom. Mr. Weifenbach?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to have a discussion come Monday on moving the flood project out of the vision, or out of the Journeys budget and put it in their own budget. And the other one is I would like to have a conversation about moving the police department's budget that was put into the mayor's budget for the patrol, the downtown patrol.
The homeless patrol?
Homeless intervention portion of
Homeless
the budget.
intervention program. I would like to have that moved out of the mayor's budget, or at least have that conversation. However my colleagues land on it, I'm fine. I want to separate that item out of the mayor's budget. And have that conversation, so. One of the things people got to understand about fees and stuff too is the state law says that you charge what it costs you to do it, so they're not revenue generators, so they pay back what it costs you. And then in the case of the swimming pools, that's a whole different conversation because
Mr. Weifenbach?
we've made that
Did
decision.
it to Richie, I'm gonna do it to you. Can we keep 2 future budget meetings and?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
what we're talking about, user fees, right? And what it costs to run
Do you wish to have another budget meeting? Pauline, what kind of timeline for
No,
publishing?
I'm fine, I don't need to talk about it, but when people make a comment, they gotta understand. I understand what I'm talking about, I don't need any help. I know what a user fee is, and I'm trying to explain it to everybody else. So when we have that conversation, the rest of my colleagues will understand that I'm fine with it. But, yep, I'm done, so I don't need to have any more conversation.
Did you feel we need to have another
Right, no, I got the
special-
things moved that I wanted to move.
Just do
I'm
this on
good
the
with-
7th next Tuesday?
I'm good
and-
with moving forward because, like I said, we talk and talk and talk, but nobody does anything to try to correct anything. So I'm trying to get some corrections made and some understandings to help you guys correct things. So if I'm out of order, I'm fine with that too.
So here's, so far what I'm hearing, there's a few topics that you want discussed or whatnot. Honestly, I don't think it matters to us where the homeless issue lies. And so if you want it to either be in the police department or we set up its own cost center for that, we can do that. We have a different cost center that PD used to use that we can very easily put it there. If you want the flood money taken out of the journey, we can find a place to do that as well. I don't think it matters where it lies at the end of the day. We just wanted to make sure that it was in the budget. And so if that's one of the reasons why you want to have another meeting, I don't think it will be necessary. I think we know that that's one of the things that's desired. As far as the rates, we don't think that you guys are going to take action anytime before this budget is completed to decide what we're going to do with the rates. It is really a topic for future conversations. And I want to continue these conversations because there's more than just rates that we need to talk about getting written policies for. We should be adopting rates and policies like when the water and sewer went through their rate study, they came through and said, we need to have a financial policy on water and sewer and how we set rates. And that's really what we need to do for the general fund as well, something similar to that. We also talk about a reserve fund, a depreciation fund, so that way you can replace fixed assets. So I don't think that that topic needs to be discussed absolutely as part of the budget, I guess is what I'm saying on that one. As far as PILT is concerned, I can easily explain that during a regular first reading or second reading, if that's the desire. If there's more stuff that you guys think need to be discussed at a separate budget meeting, I'm definitely not opposed to it. Looking ahead, I would either, it has to be between first and second reading, so it would either need to be next Thursday or the following week.
Is there any other items from my colleagues specifically addressing, such as Ron just did with Pauline, specific items he would like to change? That's how we'll do this, then we'll adjourn because we're not taking action on anything tonight. Darla Drew, go
Well,
ahead.
and that could actually go down to 4, because number 4 is actually the appropriation ordinance that we're kind of talking about all of it together, but
Okay, I guess at the next meeting, be it just this or when we're actually going over the budget, I'd like to see us look at the budget for the Journey, the Performing Arts Center, and the Doll so they can operate at the way that we need these assets to be operating. Thank you.
Thank you, Darla. Mr. Weifenbach again?
Make it short and quick. So the next meeting will be our first reading for the budget, correct, Pauline?
correct, and that's Tuesday, September 7th.
Okay, one question. When we had our last meeting about this, the mayor asked for people up here to send questions to the mayor's office. How many of those questions did you field?
I
many
got
different-
questions from you and Mr. Stroman, and I don't know if
Thank
there's
you.
others out there. I don't know. Those are the ones that were sent to me. I don't know if there's others out there.
Thank you, Mr. Weifenbach. Anything else from anybody, specific items or specific changes to the budget you can recommend to Pauline to bring back on Tuesday night's meeting? And I think we should just call this meeting adjourned and readdress this.
Let's talk about number 3 on the CPI, please, because we need to know kind of general direction on the CPI for the
Okay,
ordinance.
of course.
The amount for CPI is 1.2% over 2020's request, and so that, actually 2021's request, and that dollar amount would be $234,501 is what we're at for the CPI taxes that we would request.
Pauline, can you advise if there's any large TIF payoffs like there has been the past 2 years, which did not, we took CPI, but it didn't affect our levy?
Yes, we do have TID 40, 54, and 69 that have since been dissolved, and so they will also help take some of that brunt of the taxes.
Thank you. Darla Drew?
Thank you. I'll be voting in favor of the CPI when we get to that on Tuesday. Thank you.
Is anyone absolutely opposed to taking CPI?
Mr. Stroman?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm in favor of taking the CPI too, and I'm not sure what the arguments are against it, so I'm in favor of taking it. Thank you.
Well, unless we're told otherwise, we'll have both the resolution and on the agenda for the 7th, as well as included in the appropriation ordinance as well.
I think that'd be good. Thank you, Pauline. We already tackled item 4, and this meeting is adjourned. We will reconvene on Tuesday, the 7th at 6:30.
Thank you.
You are the last party in the conference.